distinguished guests, friends, and dear actor of change. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the high-level event, Building a Sustainable and Resilient Future, Subnational Governments Leading Integrated Approaches for People, Planet, and Prosperity, on the occasion of the 2021 High-Level Political Forum. My name is Jean Lemire. I'm the Special Envoy for Climate Change, Nordic and Arctic Affairs for the Government of Quebec, and I will be your moderator today. As you know, more than ever, the world is grappling with historic challenges, and more than ever, we must show solidarity and partnership. There may be only one positive aspect of the pandemic. We know that together, we can tackle challenges that seems unachievable not so long ago. And we are going to need this historic solidarity to meet the major environmental challenges that we have to face today. We need the global efforts to respond to climate and biodiversity crisis, the potential of the 2030 agenda and the SDGs as a universal roadmap to achieve a sustainable future. And the key role of subnational government is very, very important. This event is the first of 3 events to be organized by Region 4 in 2021. A special thank you to the co-organizers and partners, and I really, really thank them a lot. Without you, all that is not possible. And you can see all their logo. Again, thank you very, very much. We have very high-level speakers today. Together in our first panel, we will explore the path ahead from recovery to a resilient future. And to do that, we need to adopt integrated approaches and create synergy among the global agenda. As you know, 2021 is a very important year. We will have a COP26 in Glasgow, COP15 Biodiversity in Kunming, China, and we have no other choice. We have to succeed. We have real leaders here today who understand the importance to raise ambition and inspired action. In our second panel, we will see the importance of the leadership of subnational governments in integrating the global agendas. We will see that with great examples of great actions. I must offer my apologies to the panelists for the pronunciation of their name. Sorry, English is not my first language. But first, let me introduce you the Honorable Arantxa Tapia, Region 4 President and Minister for Economic Development, Sustainability and Environment of the Basque Government, Spain, for the opening remarks. Madame Tapia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lemire. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. On behalf of Regions 4, I would like to welcome the governors, presidents, ministers, UN representatives, international experts, and all the participants who are with us today. This high-level event will address the interconnection of the well-being and prosperity of people and planet through multi-level governance and international cooperation. Today, we'll bring together 10 regions from different contexts and realities from around the world in the framework of the UN High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. These regions represent our constituency and are calling for more meaningful participation in UN forums. Today, we will voice our aspirations for the 2021 global meetings, and we will share our contributions to ensure that recovery is a real opportunity to address the environmental, economic, and social justice issues that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the stage. The pandemic has conditioned some of the progress made on the 2030 agenda, but it has also illustrated the power of political decision making. The event we will now begin brings together heads of government to show their commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals as a roadmap to guide the shaping of a transformative post-COVID-19 recovery. Regions 4 is a community of more than 40 subnational governments from around the world that has been promoting the integration of sustainable development, climate action, and biodiversity for nearly 20 years. We have the knowledge, commitment, innovative practices, and inclusive vision for a sustainable and resilient future. Regions 4 Today launches the short document, The Voice of the Regions in the UN Reporting System, focusing on voluntary subnational reports and other regional contributions to the 2030 agenda. Its content is based on the knowledge and experiences shared in the Regions 4 community of practice, our network's main initiative to support the location of the Sustainable Development Goals. I invite you to learn more about the benefits of conducting a voluntary report at the regional level, and to be inspired by 3 concrete practical examples on how to align these goals with legislation, annual budgets, and indicators. In our experience, cooperation between regional governments builds collective action and is the basis of advocacy for the future we want. For these reasons, we provide our members with numerous initiatives for the exchange of knowledge, best practices, and the creation of joint positions such as the Biodiversity Learning Platform or the Regions Adapt Community, recently named official partner of the Race to Resilience campaign, which I also invite you to get to join and know in another way. We want to grow our network, add voices, and increase global ambition. I therefore invite all subnational governments to join this global alliance for sustainable development capable of addressing today's environmental crisis. In turn, we offer the United Nations our knowledge to work in the participatory, inclusive, and multi-stakeholder multilateral system, whereas national governments obtain the recognition and visibility they deserve as key implementers of the biodiversity, climate change, and sustainable development agendas. On behalf of Regions 4 and from the presidency held by the Basque government, we hope that today's event will be inspiring. Inspiring for the UN system to engage subnational governments as a distinct sphere of governance and to promote greater multi-level cooperation. Inspiring for regions presenting their practices to know that their leadership efforts are presented as exemplary models. Inspiring for regions not yet engaged in global conversation to collaborate with us to increase their impact. And finally, inspiring for all participants to exercise their citizens' voice and work to engage their governments in commitments and actions to achieve a more sustainable and resilient future for everybody, for our young people especially. Thank you very much, and I hope that this will be very, very interesting for all of us.
Thank you very much, Madam Tapia, for your kind words, and keep up the great work. We need you, and we need to work all together. It is now a pleasure for me to introduce our first panel of experts and our first theme, the path ahead from recovery to a resilient future. Our 3 speakers will be Ms. Lotta Tatinen, Chief Outreach and Partnership Branch, Division for Sustainable Development Goals at the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, followed by Dr. Susan Shumba, Global Ambassador of the UNFCCC's Race to Zero and Race to Resilience campaigns, and Mrs. Elizabeth Maruma Mrema, Deputy Executive Secretary at the Convention on Biological Diversity. So, Ms. Tatinen, first, what are the lessons learned from UNDESA on the voluntary local reviews? And what is the potential that you see on the growing recognition of SDG localizations?
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. I would like to begin by thanking Regions for Sustainable Development and all the partners for inviting me and UNDESA to join you today. And it's such a great pleasure for me to be here today for this very timely discussion, as it takes place just a few days before the start of the UN High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development, which, as you know, is the central global platform to review implementation of the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs, and for which my department, UNDESA, is the Secretariat. Allow me to start by quickly highlighting a few opportunities during the upcoming high-level political forum for regional and local governments to engage and contribute. More information about these opportunities are, of course, available on the HLPF website. Firstly, we are extremely pleased that this year the forum will devote one of its official sessions for a discussion on subnational SDG implementation. This session will be held on 8 July, and for the very first time, the forum will be addressing also voluntary local reviews that are conducted by local and regional governments. So I invite you all to follow that formal session, which is a first in the HLPF history. Let me also invite all of you to take part in the 4th Local and Regional Governments Forum, which is organized on 12th and 13th of July in connection with the HLPF. DESA is very pleased to organize this together with the Global Task Force of Local and Regional Governments, UN Habitat, UNDP, and Local 2030. Now, distinguished moderator, allow me to begin addressing the questions that you have just posed. I think that the COVID-19 pandemic has made it even clearer how local and regional governments are absolutely critical partners to implement the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs, including by putting in place policies and solutions that have a direct impact on communities and cities. All over the world, we have seen how local and regional governments have had to quickly position, collaborate, and respond to a broad range of needs as a result of this pandemic, from delivering public services to adjusting public transportation and to coordinating efforts to safeguard the functioning of economies and much, much more. It's become clear that as we seek to recover and rebuild our societies from this pandemic, our efforts need to be rooted around the SDGs if we are to safeguard a sustainable future. Also, we need the strong commitment of and cooperation with local and regional governments, including through their voluntary review of policies and practices and by their public ambitions, actions, and commitments. So in this context, we've been extremely excited over the last few years to see how the voluntary local reviews prepared by local and regional governments have really turned into a movement that is rapidly gaining traction around the world. We see that these VLRs can be an effective tool to further localize the SDGs. They can help to support an enhanced dialogue and coherence between the different levels of government, including by creating linkages between the VLRs and the voluntary national reviews that are prepared by the national governments. What's encouraging is that these benefits have also been recognized by member states who have referred to the VLRs as useful tools. For example, in the recent intergovernmental negotiations on the future shape and modalities of the high-level political forum. For us, this acknowledgement by member states also gives a very positive signal for the entire UN system to more systematically engage in supporting local and regional governments in their VLR processes. For example, the VLRs can be a very interesting tool to enhance collaboration between the United Nations resident coordinator offices and subnational actors to bring more strongly the voices of local and regional governments in the UN's work at the country level. We also feel that these VLRs can be particularly powerful tools to help ignite new partnerships amongst various actors at the local level. Also, as you know, many of the UN regional commissions have a strong role to play in supporting subnational governments with their VLRs, and also by bringing these VLRs into their discussions at the regional forums for sustainable development that are organized in the lead up to the high-level political forum. Now in DESA, our division for sustainable development goals has been providing both normative and capacity building support on SDG implementation directly for local and regional governments who are interested in engaging in the VLRs, building on the knowledge that we have gained over the years supporting national governments around their VNR preparations. Last year, we made available global guiding elements for the VLRs that really seek to provide a proposed shared structure for these VLRs and at a minimum give a checklist of issues that could be reflected in the VLR process. These guiding elements are really a practical tool for any local government or regional government who are starting the journey of preparing their VLRs. And they build on the Secretary General's common guidelines for the voluntary national reviews and try to enhance coherence between these two levels of reviews. Last year, we organized a number of VLR-related workshops for interested local and regional governments and addressed issues such as stakeholder engagement in these processes, data, monitoring and indicators, and integration of SDGs into local strategies and budgets. It's been great to see how local and regional governments have been able to provide useful solutions through these peer learning exercises and find new partners for their work. And we would like to invite more interested members from regions for sustainable development to join these webinars as we continue to roll them out. Now, allow me to conclude, moderator, just to note that as we are moving ahead on the decade of action for the SDGs, it's really time to move from words to action. I hope that today's event will further inspire all of you to double down on your efforts and to create a more sustainable and resilient future for us all. I would like to take this opportunity to invite all of you to register and share information about your innovative SDG acceleration actions in the lead up to the HLPF through the global online platform that has been established by our department to capture and shine the spotlight on new and ambitious voluntary actions by all levels of government and actors. So far, we have over 300 of these inspiring SDG acceleration actions registered online. About 8% of these actions come from local and regional governments, and we are very much looking forward to seeing more commitments from you featured in this global database. I wish you a very fruitful event today, and I thank you again for inviting you and DESA to participate. I thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Ms. Tatinen. I will remember, that that very important sentence that you said, now it's time from words to action. So thank you again, very inspiring. And I think that the VLR is a great tool, and it sends, like you said, a strong signal to the UN family on the importance of local and subnational governance. Again, thank you very, very much. I now give the floor to Ms. Chamba, who play an important role in the mobilization of key players. Ms. Chamba, good morning. One question for you. What needs to be put in place to create integrated resilient solution and create synergies? Mrs. Chamba.
Thank you so much. And also I'd like just to start with a big thank you to the regions for this invitation and collaboration with the Race to Resilience team, of which I'm a global ambassador. So just to your question, moderator, we know that at least 65% of the SDGs cannot be achieved unless regional and local governments are fully and equitably involved. So I'd like to highlight some of the mechanisms that present excellent opportunities for integration from global to national to regional and even local levels at the current times that we are living in. These include national adaptation plans, the nationally determined contributions, NDCs, and what we've heard from Lotta about the voluntary local reviews, that's the VLRs for Sustainable Development Goals, to name just a few. I'd like to highlight 3 enabling factors to create integrated, resilient solutions that can be scaled up from our work here in Africa. First of my key point is coordination and collaboration. The second point I'd like to emphasize is further decentralization of decision-making. And the third one is decentralization, fiscal decentralization. So what do I mean by coordination and collaboration? So coordinating NDCs, the National Adaptation Plans of Actions, and Sustainable Development Goals at the regional level can be a key lever for ensuring we have coherence and effectiveness, but also in terms of managing trade-offs in terms of activities that are engaged in each of these 3 platforms. So we can see very well that for different interventions, you might have a different kind of trade-offs, but when you have a platform for coordination and collaboration, then you can ensure coherence. The coordination needs to happen both at the policy level, at the planning process, and at the implementation. Because of time, I'd just like to move to the second factor in terms of further decentralization of decision-making. What do I mean by this? So I'm borrowing a lot from the principles of locally led adaptation that the World Resources Institute, of which I'm the director of Vital Landscapes, has really helped with partners develop. So on decentralization of decision-making, we see that local communities are on the front lines of climate change impact, and especially in a continent like Africa, where we know very well that there's very little capacity to adapt and the high vulnerability because of socio-economic dimensions. Yet these communities rarely do have a voice in decision-making for those decisions that really affect them. So regional governments and local governments can ensure the voices of local communities are heard through different forums and different structures at the regional and local level. Regional governments can help, in particular, ensure that we are addressing structural inequalities faced by women, youth, disabled, indigenous groups, and other marginalized groups and ethnic groups in the society. It's very important that we get those voices heard and that the decisions that we are making are ensuring that we are really addressing inequalities that they face. And the last point on the factors is on fiscal decentralization. So we know very well currently for most of the initiatives that we are pushing forward, whether it's on adaptation, there are $100 billion that were promised for adaptation. Very little has happened and very little has trickled down to the regional and local level. Decentralizing funding mechanisms, both global as well as national funding mechanisms to the regional level to support inclusive and resilient territorial plans is important. Currently, we are not seeing that happening. Allow me, the moderator, to give you an example of an integrated solution that we are working with here in Africa at the landscape level. This is a landscape restoration. Landscape restoration offers the potential to address both climate change goals as well as sustainable development goals. And these are many, from in addressing agriculture productivity, increasing income, and other kind of ecosystem services that come as a result of restoring degraded lands. Not to mention also the aspect of reversing biodiversity loss when we restore degraded ecosystems. So in Africa, we do this through especially the AFR 100, which is basically a commitment so far by more than 30 countries to restore at least 125 million hectares by 2030. So my question I've been asking myself, how much have we aligned with the regional and local governments across the African continent? And my answer to you is today that this is work in progress. We are gradually realizing that restoration happens and will continue to happen at the local level, and that regional and subnational governments are going to be extremely crucial in designing, prioritizing, and funding, as well as supporting the implementation of restoration actions if it is to happen at the speed and the scale that is required to address those broader goals that I mentioned. So the moderator, I'd just like to say that they are excellent examples of how we can develop integrated solutions, and to mention that under the Marrakesh partnership and the Race to Resilience, the high-level champions and ambassadors such as myself are really using this platform to drive and catalyze actions on global climate action by supporting the implementation of the Paris Agreement, enabling collaboration between governments, cities, regions, businesses, investors, and other actors that must act on climate change. So to conclude, the Race to Resilience puts people first and nature first in pursuit of a resilient world, so that we are not just surviving the climate shocks and stresses, but we are thriving in spite of them. You did hear Lotta also mention about the Race to Resilience, and I'd also like to encourage other actors to join this race, to be able to catalyze action. Mainly, we started off with non-state actors, but state actors can be approved through a special mechanism for joining the Race to Resilience. So the goal is to have at least 4 billion people from groups and communities who are vulnerable to climate risks, really their resilience being built by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kamba. You really demonstrate the importance of working together. And you touch a very important point also about funding. And this is really important, I think. And also you talk about the importance of inclusion. Everybody should have a voice around the table. And I thank you for all that. So thank you. Time is running. So we will go with our next guest. Thank you again, Ms. Kamba. Our next guest is not with us today, but she sent us a message filled with hope and determination. Ms. Elizabeth Maruma Mrema is the Executive Secretary of the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, and she has this message for us. Please, video.
Ladies and gentlemen, greetings to you all. I would like to thank the Network of Regional Governments for Sustainable Development for the opportunity to address this event. The mobilization of subnational governments and regions to reverse the unacceptable rate of nature loss is critical for our well-being and that of the planet. With subsidies and perverse incentives, we are spending more money to destroy nature than we are devoting to protect it. Changing this pattern is an urgent necessity. Policies and programs need to be harmonized in order to mainstream nature at all levels and into all economic sectors as an integrated response to the economic and climate crisis. Subnational governments, as managers of land and seascapes, and as connectors of urban-rural linkages, are central to the integrated approach. Collectively, you can execute a significant part of the public budget and are involved in the economic and technical incentives that can guide the economy towards nature-based solutions. Consider the Sustainable Development Goals under review at the high-level political forum. In the poorest countries, nature represents more than 50% of the global domestic product. Its role in the COVID-19 pandemic and for our planetary and individual health has well been established by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. Clean water gets to your table 10 times cheaper if purified by wetlands, rivers, and lakes. And there is no effective adaptation and mitigation to climate change without nature-based solutions, just as there can be no clean production or sustainable consumption without ensuring good stewardship of nature, as it is critical development asset. The global economic recovery packages provide us with a great opportunity. Building back greener, leveraging the power of nature is absolutely critical as the world prepares its largest investment package since the Marshall Plan. Regions, states, and provinces have a major role to play. At the upcoming Biodiversity and Climate Change conferences and for all Sustainable Development Goals, we need to adopt ambitious targets to preserve our collective resilience and to protect nature as one of the basic assets for human well-being. With the Convention on Biological Diversity, we have a unique opportunity before us. The United Nations is designing a 10-year blueprint for living in harmony with nature. The post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework features the Edinburgh Process, a consultative process where the voices of cities and subnational governments are heard as part of the work program of the open-ended working group for the development of the framework. As a multilateral agreement, the Convention, through its Secretariat, has 11 years of experience in enabling a meaningful participation and engagement of subnational governments in forums such as cities and subnational summits held prior to the meetings of the Conference of the Parties. This is where Region 4 and the many subnational governments already engaged in the Convention of Biological Diversity can really make a difference. The outcomes of the work towards the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and the Edinburgh Process for the engagement of cities and subnational governments will help all parties and all stakeholders to identify and implement solutions that address multiple sustainable development goals and multilateral environmental agreements in an integrated and participative processes. I invite you to demonstrate your catalytic role and leadership in driving action for climate, biodiversity, and sustainable development by pursuing coherent policies and practices. I look forward to the follow-ups to this event at the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity in October and to the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rema. It is now a great privilege for me to introduce the First Minister of Wales, UK, Mark Drakeford. Thank you, Mr. First Minister, for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Well, Chair, thank you very much indeed, both for the introduction and for the invitation to be part of today's event. Wales is one of the 4 nations of the United Kingdom, a small nation of 3 million people, and I was asked to think about the lessons that we have learned from the recent global pandemic, its impact here on Wales, and what that can help to teach us about our efforts to meet the sustainability goals. Well, in just 5 minutes, I'm going to focus on only 2 of the many lessons which there are there to learn. And these are the lessons of solidarity on the one hand, and of locality on the other. In surviving the impact of the pandemic here in Wales, solidarity has been a key asset for us. And as a government, our job has been to help bring to the surface the commitment that people show in their daily lives and in the way in which they act to help keep others safe. And in terms of locality, we have learnt the significance which the pandemic has highlighted of the immediate environments in which people live. The house when you are working from home, the garden when travel is not possible, the rediscovery of local neighbourhoods when the impact of traffic diminishes and people are once again able to recapture those streets. And I was asked to provide some specific examples of how those qualities have been translated into practical action during the pandemic and what that can help teach us for the future. So here is just one example for each of those qualities. In terms of solidarity, we have long had a programme, a Wales and Africa programme, which prior to the pandemic had, in a joint project with people in Uganda, had already planted a forest the size of Wales in that country, including a tree planted in Uganda for every child born in Wales. And now we have been able to use the network that we have built up through the Wales and Africa programme to extend the help that we are able to provide in Uganda, in Lesotho, in Namibia, to take account of the impact of the pandemic in those parts of the globe and to use that sense of solidarity, which has been such a feature of the Welsh response, to extend that to finding new ways in which we can work with our partners in those other parts of the globe in that pandemic context. And as far as locality is concerned, we learned very early on the vulnerability which comes when you are dependent upon complex global supply chains for essential goods. Here in Wales, we have used indigenous companies to build up their capacity to produce vital supplies closer to home, so that as the global pandemic continues to unfold and as we learn the lessons from it, we are less vulnerable in the future to our dependency on those global ways of doing business and reaping the environmental benefits, as well as the supply benefits of doing more in that local context. Here in Wales, we do all of that under the banner of our Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, an act passed here in Wales and that obliges all our great public services to test the decisions we make, not simply against their impact in the here and now and for Welsh people here today, but against the impact that they have on the ability of generations who succeed us to inherit a planet and our beautiful but fragile part on the face of the globe in a condition which we would not be ashamed to hand it on to them. And amongst the 7 goals of our Wellbeing of Future Generations Act is a goal to be a globally responsible Wales. We are just at the start of a new 5-year term of our Senedd, our new Parliament. And we have created at the very start of this Senedd term a new Ministry of Climate Change, bringing together the great drivers of transport, housing, planning, energy, and the environment in a combined effort to make a difference. We will use all the levers we have in the land that is in public ownership, whether that is alongside the verges of roads, whether it's in the new schools that we are building, whether it is in the grounds of hospitals, to improve biodiversity. We will legislate to abolish the use of more commonly littered single-use plastics. We are going to create a national forest here in Wales, a symbol of our determination to play our part and to give it a focus for people in Wales to see the contribution that we are making. We will go on upholding our policy of opposing the extraction of fossil fuels here in Wales. And only this week, our Deputy Minister for Climate Change has announced our decision to pause all new road building schemes here in Wales against the backdrop of our legally binding target of reaching net zero by 2050. We will do all of that by going on playing our part as global citizens through international cooperation and the solidarity that I started with, so that in this year's COP26, we make our contribution to the challenge of climate change, which requires everybody to work together. In that way, we can locally create the fairer, stronger, greener, and more successful Wales, but in solidarity, play our part in achieving the global goals that bind us together. Thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to have made that brief contribution to today's meeting.
Well, thank you very, very, very much, First Minister. It's full of passion, and we can feel that, you know, Wales have great lessons, and it's really inspiring. So I would like to thank you very, very much for, you know, the great values of Wales and the great work. So thank you very much, First Minister.
Thank you.
I am now pleased to welcome our second speaker, the Honorable, sorry for the pronunciation, Inigo Urkulu, President of the Basque government in Spain. Sorry for the pronunciation, Mr. President. The Basque government was pioneer in aligning the plans to the 2030 agenda and adopt a comprehensive approach to localize the SDGs. You are mobilizing multiple stakeholders to realize a common vision, both in your territory and globally as Region 4 President. How are you achieving new ways of working together?
Good afternoon to you all. Thank you so much, Jean Lemire. Thank you so much for your intervention. It is an honor to be part in this event of high level representing the Basque Country, together with representatives of the United Nations, governments, and international organizations. The 11th March 2020, the World Health Organization declared the pandemic. We are still suffering from a reality which is conditioning our lives and relationships all over the world. We live in a global time, and we are working in order to offer global answers from the knowledge, experience, and closeness to the local reality. We live at a time and we are talking about a word we call in Basque about ausolana, which is really cooperative work, and I am really very thankful for the organization of this platform in order to share experiences and reflect on an objective which is very ambitious: how to build a resilient future when we are designing integrative plans for people, prosperity, and the health of the planet. The Basque Country has been a pioneer to have a cross-cutting and integrative approach of the Agenda 2030, and in fact the European Commission has published a report where it's highlighting the Basque Country as an example of the application of the Agenda 2030 in the public policies application. I share the three keys of our model. First of all, the integration of the sustainable development objectives that are supported in 4 pillars in our government: prosperity, people, planet, and self-government. The second key, the vision of this Agenda 2030, built based on alliances with public and private stakeholders, a multi-level governance with the respect of the competencies allocations and a stimulation to cooperation. Third, the coherence of policies is part of our priorities, and the Agency 2030 understood as an open space to participation and direct commitment of society. We have presented Basque Real Deal, so this is the Basque roadmap for a green, sustainable, and fair development, a development that will have industry and technology as main engines of transformation, a model with own legislative instruments, so this law of climate change and energetic transitions, and together with the law of natural asset or patrimony. And I am finishing with a call for the international community. A sustainable and resilient future really emphasize the cooperation, solidarity, and participation in the decision-making process of all the political and social stakeholders. The cooperation must be reciprocal. Therefore, we insist on calling United Nations and the international community to ask for a bigger participation of our governments. We represent national realities or regional realities. We share the vocation of participating in the global decision-making processes, and the Basque Country has been acknowledged by this economic and financial agreement on the part of the European institutions, and represents an advanced model of tax federalism in Europe. And we have also asked for a singular statutory system that enables the communities to have a legal participation in the European institutions. And this is a way to advance in a new model of state, that is advanced and acknowledges the plurality of nations within, and our capacity of international representation settled on the principles of subsidiarity, co-responsibility, and proportionality. We are committed, and we ask for commitment. So the political forum of high level about sustainable level must offer an official space where our governments can have a voice in this global governance. The Convention of Biological Biodiversity has to promote and to encourage a specific solution for our governments so that we can participate in the implementation of the new framework of biodiversity post-2020, aligned with the Edinburgh statements. The United Nations framework for the climate change must give the resources and political will so that each part can make a landmark for this multi-level cooperation in order to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement. From the Basque Country, we offer all our support and political will and commitment to cooperate with the United Nations and to try to transform the world for the horizon 2045. We contribute with our experience in the government, the closeness to the people, the culture, and the territory, and we want to participate in this governance model of United Nations to build together the world we want to. This is the time for this cooperation of all of us at work. So thank you, and thank you for your participation and commitment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I am pleased now to introduce the Honorable Abdesamad Sekal, President of Rabat Saleh Kenitra in Morocco. Si vous me le permettez, Monsieur le Président, je vais vous poser leading role in development, and Rabat Saleh Kenitra is very committed with the protection of the environment. How are you building resilience? Monsieur le Président.
Merci.
Merci, Monsieur Sekal.
Merci. Je rappelle juste que je suis Abdesamad Sekal, président du Conseil.
I am the president of the Council of the Region of Rabat, and I want to thank Regions 4 for having organized this event. Regions 4 is a very active event for the Organization of the United Nations, and I am the president. I have been the president from the year 2007. Our network is a platform for the regions, and one of the main goals is to take the voice of this level of governance, which is really essential as it happens today. And we are talking about the subnational governments for getting integrated as a world stakeholder within the 2030 agency, the Paris Agreement, and the urban agenda. And you know that the success of these three agendas is a very complex one, a very slow one, that has to become more mature with the practice, and we must adopt innovative forms regarding these multi-level instruments and tools, and within the framework of the new pedagogy of sharing. This process does not only have to do with the perfect convergence between the several components of these agendas, but it has to do also with these materializations of principles and orientations under the way of integrative and territorial development structure. That's why that the regions and the governments, the subnational ones, are the most appropriate scale in order to develop these kind of visions and territorialized and integrated programs. The governments, the local and regional governments have to elaborate visions of territorial development within the framework of strategic planning, mobilizing all the territorial actors within an inclusive project which is democratic and is really one of a partnership that is co-creating a sustainable development of the territory. So the regional scale has got a central role here, allowing to elaborate a vision and allows to materialize its principles and context with specific actions and positive ones in the populations, giving an effective and operative context. So this principle of subsidiarity and making sure a proximity and a participation of the citizens to the process of decision making. It is that within this framework that the regions of Morocco have become a very important stakeholder in favor of a territorial reform that has been started by our country in the last decade. So this advanced regionalizations process that has been made in my country has allowed the emergence of a territorial governance model based on the active subsidiary principle in the three levels, so regions, prefectures, and municipalities, and the new challenges of this territorial development and the need of thinking of this prospective reference that is going to guide the public action in the future will be formalized nowadays within the framework of a new development model, the fruit of a very big national consultancy, and that has given a very important element to the territory territorial development dimension with the intervention of our kin and the whole population. This model has really manifested the importance of the territorial dimension, transforming them in development and anchoring places and the source of creation of material and non-material wealth, of eclosion of the participatory democracy and anchoring of the principles of sustainability of the resources and their resilience in front of these effects of the climate change. So the 5 strategic choices that have been proposed have been: first, to make the creation of a prosperous and dynamic Morocco of regions, and then second, to make a territorial exchange. 3, to favor an integrated ordination of the territories, to improve the habitat, 4, to preserve the natural resources and to reinforce resilience of the territories against climate change. Number 5, to preserve the water resources through a better value of the resources and with a more strict management of them for the present and future generations. So territories are in the central core of the development of Morocco, and a new via is open up to consolidate what we have achieved and to open up new action tracks that will allow us to illustrate better the determining factors of a regional sustainable practice in Morocco. We have got 12 tools, two tools, he corrects himself, that are the regional scheme of ordination of territory, a general reference framework in the long run for a sustainable and cohesive territory development with the agreement between the private and public actors. And the second tool is the Program of Regional Development, the PDR, a document with a programming objective linked to the length of the mandate, so 6 years, that are materializing the vision of a strategy in a specific actions with a direct impact on the population. For instance, in the region of Rabat, we have got Kenira, and we have made the main challenge out of durability regarding this context of sustainable development and taking into account the impact of climate change in the territory. This has been materialized in 8 main objectives that have to do with a coherent and balanced sustainable development in the region of Rabat, Kenira. And I always underline this in my different interventions. So to reach a sustainable and integrative development is really a challenge of governance, so that the different actions can be performed within the framework of a complementarity among the different levels of governance, especially the intermediate scale, which is the perfect step for the elaboration of a global vision of sustainable development and materialization in actions. And the application of this vision depends on the level of articulation among the different territorial actors of territorial cooperation, and also participation broadened and active of the civil society and the citizens. Those are challenges that we have to undertake, and all of us have to face them. And I hope that all of us, all together with our debates, we can share experiences, and I thank you for your attention.
Merci pour ces messages. Quand vous parlez de défis de gouvernance, vous avez vraiment...
And thanks a lot, yes, for talking about this challenge of governance. You are right.
To meet in person soon. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
It is now a privilege for me to introduce our next speaker, the Honorable Cecilia Mendez Mora, Prefect of Azuay in Ecuador. As you know, Azuay is a long-lasting advocate for the preservation of the environment and has been searching for alternatives to the climate crisis through popular wisdom, such as the one from rural women and indigenous people. Can you share as we good practice with us, please?
Buen día y mil gracias a la comunidad internacional.
Good morning, and thank you so much to the international community to allow Ecuador and, in my voice, Latin America, to communicate my message to this distinguished forum and to communicate the experiences we have had in my country about essential topics that have been also mentioned here and have to do especially with the crisis of health, linked, no doubt about it, with the economic crisis, which is one of the axes of the sustainable development. I would like to mention that within this topic, there has been, in my country, there has been a link, especially in the provincial area of Leosuay, with the government, with indigenous governments. In this case, in our area, we are talking about two areas, El Abón, at the southeast of our region in Suay, Ecuador, and the Comuna San Sebastian from the seas. And we have to say that in this topic, during the pandemics, we have learned to value the knowledge of the people in the Andes about their own medicine. And this is something ancestral, this is something really ancient, but it has not only to do with wisdom, but also of knowledge. And especially what we have made is really to link a process of systematization of this process itself, and to highlight that one of the elements that have really helped the Andes to stop or to take care of the topic of health here in the Leosuay, and also in a big part of the indigenous communities in Ecuador, is the so-called shell, the little shell. This is a product which is original of our region, and it was also used to control paludism, but it has been also very effective in the control of the pandemics of the COVID-19. So this connects us with the obligation we have as governments, as subnational governments or intermediate governments, as we call it here, in order to take care of nature. And that's why we have got the care of the primary goods, the conservation, preservation of everything that means water, little trees. This has to do with this biodiversity, which is so important and essential, that takes place in the Andes mountain range, and really has proven to be a healing tool for the most vulnerable populations. So we are talking about indigenous people fundamentally, but also about urban and suburban mixed race people that have also turned to this ancient knowledge as a way of protecting themselves against this deadly virus. This on the one hand. On the other hand, we have been worried about recovering the systems, the environmental systems, the systems of the goods, which are the ones that provide us with water on permanent basis. It is water that we can drink. It is a pure one, and we have really to launch with it the care of vulnerable groups and also the ones of the children. We have recovered the wetlands, very important wetlands that we have got in a region called Girón, and in another one of the mining activity, the mine activity we have here too, and this is connected with the need of launching and promoting development. And the other thing that we have got here, it is very important to highlight that we have tried to connect one another. We have tried to connect with the peasants communities and also with the cities in order to promote the reduction, in the case of COVID, of hunger and of course the poverty. And we want to combat, to fight against poverty, because this means economic crisis, health crisis, and this is a reason for concern for all of us. And in the case of the Leosuay, what we have done is to strengthen the companies of mixed economy that we have got as a provincial government, with the participation and also the companies in Leosuay, in Leosuay, that are dealing with the farming production and the production of the peasants communities. And also we have been dealing with the small producers of milk, of dairy products, in order to try to solve the topics of food in El Azuay. And finally, I would like to remark that we are in fact involved and committed in an inclusive way with the objectives of the sustainable developments. But in our case, in the case of Latin America, and specifically of the areas of the Andes and Equator, we would like to talk about the human development. This is really something that has to be strengthened even more, because we think that this axis of development is fundamentally really for the people. Humans are the most important part of this, and we acknowledge the big importance of all these other objectives, and we are happy to cooperate with economic and social units and with United Nations. And we, of course, are cooperating with them, with the United Nations, having the person as a center for this sustainable development. Thank you so much for listening to me. Have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia Mendez Mora. Thank you very, very, very much. I think that, like you said, we need initiatives that bring more and more the voices of indigenous people around the table. You also talk about the ancient and traditional knowledge. It's key in our future. So thank you very, very much. It's now a real pleasure for me to introduce the Honorable Pere Aragones, President of the Government of Catalonia, Spain. Mr. President, thank you to be with us today. For sustainable development to be achievable, we really need political will. Catalonia has recently made 920 commitments for the implementation of the 2030 agenda, both within and beyond Catalonia. What motivates you to take integrated approaches? Mr. President.
Good afternoon. A very warm greeting for all the participants, for all the authorities. I would like to highlight what the effects and the lessons that the pandemics of this COVID-19 have generated in Catalonia, connected, of course, with the challenges in matters of the sustainable development objectives, and also the bets that we are doing on an environmental space. And for instance, we are talking about these objectives 2020, so prior to the pandemics, and they were talking about infectious diseases and sickness as one of the 10 global risks regarding its impact. And despite the development that has taken place in the whole world from the experiences of the Ebola epidemic, we have seen clearly that the health systems were not ready, were not well prepared for a pandemic of these characteristics in no country at all, and we are aware of this reality nowadays. So the COVID-19 has really appealed to us as a society, and really we have got the need of working in the resilience of the system. Then it has shown us that how, as in general terms, the behavior patterns have not been modified, and the public decisions have not been modified until a threat to our lives is experienced in Catalonia. And I am really convinced that in many other territories we have learned the lesson, and we have left the pandemics with a reinforced healthcare system and with the awareness that we have to reinforce the fight against poverty and inequality and climate change. But because, of course, the pandemics of COVID-19 has affected the most vulnerable sectors of the society. Although in Catalonia we have got subsidies and help for the most vulnerable cities, guaranteeing a minimal income to really this inequality has impacted, so we have to change the dynamics and we have to live out of this situation without leaving anyone behind. And this wheel of transformation has to do with all the critical fields of our environment and also from an environmental point of view, and clearly working with these sustainable objectives and the fight against climate change. We have to be aware that we live in a world that is really growing very fast when we talk in demographically terms. And we are going to have more than 9,700 million inhabitants in the next years, and the urban population will grow considerably. We are talking about cities with more than 10 million of inhabitants with a consumption of resources that is on the rise. So that's why it is very important to focus the future of the project, especially with the alarm that recently a group of Nobel Prizes and other experts have launched, calling all the governments to adopt transformative policies to avoid that the huge risks that we can face if policies are not adopted have to be faced by the mankind. And this has been one of the many calls made by the scientific community. Many of them have got are transnational, and they demand a global answer, but also a local commitment at the territorial scale. And in the design and implementation of these reactions, the subnational governments must have the capacity to participate in a first role because of our knowledge of society and our closeness to the citizens. And that's why in Catalonia, we are really looking forward to the decisions that can be taken, and this COP26 devoted to the climate change. From Catalonia, for a long time ago, we have implemented climate and biodiversity policies. So this 2030 agenda is contributed with an integral perspective, and we do it from the point of view of the organization of the budget of the Catalonian government. And of course, we have launched the creation of the Joint Department of Climate Actions, Nourishment and Rural Agenda from a taxing point of view, in order to have financial measurement that allows us to have resources to many of these projects of the SDS. We have implemented this, and this is we are going to have a tax from this autumn onwards for the emissions of the home resources. And also we have got a strategy of bioeconomy 2030. So these are examples of how we are designing this transformation in Catalonia. Of this transformation we need as a society, and we are focused on this agenda 2030 in order to build a better world than the one we had before the pandemics and in territories. And we as territories are going to have a main role. We are going to play a main role. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, 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 very much, and great work. We really learned from what you just said about transformative policies, global answer, but also a local response as well. So very inspiring. Thank you very, very, very much. It is now a pleasure for me to give the floor to à Monsieur l'Honorable Aka Awile, président de Sud Comoé en Côte d'Ivoire. Mr. President, the COVID-19 pandemic has disproportionate impacts on territories all over the world, and subnational governments are at the forefront of its recovery. You have been awarded the best manager of the COVID-19 pandemic by the West African Economic and Monetary Union. So what are the lessons learned from Sud Comoé for climate resilient recovery? Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Bien, merci.
Thank you so much. If I am really truthful, I am not here as a Minister of the Healthcare. I have managed the COVID as Healthcare Minister of Ivory Coast, but nowadays I am the President of the Regional Economic and Environmental Council, and I am talking here specifically as the President of a region, of the region of Sud Comoy. After having said that, ladies and gentlemen and panelists of this session, it is a honor and a privilege for me to see that you have allowed the region of Sud Comoé to participate in a job in order to conceive a sustainable future and a resilient future. Our policy, well, I am going to present my policy first of all, and then how we face this climate change. First, the policy of the Regional Council of Sud Comoé in the strategy consists of including the climate change in the planning of the regional development. In order to achieve this development, regional plan of development of Sud Comoé consists of the promotion of tourism and the professional insertion of the young people, so that young people and regions, that they take into account the climate change. And really the ambition is to promote touristic resorts and also a space for raising awareness and protecting the environment. The regional plan for the socio-professional insertion has favored the study of vulnerability of Sud Comoé to the climate change, and of course there has been also actions to promote the so-called green jobs with this climate change, and this is an opportunity for the employment of the young people on behalf of this regional council. Second, we are fighting against the climate change. We are diminishing and adapting these negative effects, and these efforts have been made by the Regional Committee of the Sud Comoé. And then we also have other adaptations measures. First of all, we can talk about mitigation measurements, which have been the creation of a volunteer natural community reserve, and this regional council has been asking for a classification of 10,000 hectares of the woods of the Tanue in the natural reservation in order to favor its preservation and also to promote its biodiversity. And among other subsidies for the woods, there we have got a very big ecosystem with mammals, with birds. There are activities for an ecological follow-up for development of the farming sector and surveillance, and we are talking about a contribution of lagoon and lake area, and we are promoting the water resources. We are talking about more than 444 kilometers of lagoons, and they are really a well of carbon, and they have got a very strong production of phytoplankton. So between the period of time of 4 or 6 months, fishing is forbidden in this lagoon area in order to favor a biological rest and the reproduction of the fish, and in order to preserve the phytoplankton. So the regional council is supporting this decision and participates in a very active way, raising awareness in the population and also with other initiatives. There are adaptations measures, implementations of projects of social and professional insertions, and the green promotion of green jobs are funded by the European Union. And we also want to promote the farming and biology with non-conventional energy sources, and they aim at training young people in the fishing techniques. So young people are really the next carriers of a green project, and they also receive the benefits of subsidies. We have started with a bio system of farming with watering through solar energy and with fertilizers made of vegetal substances, solid compost, and we use also the domestic rubbish and animal rests for this. And what we want to do is to favor the a richer soil, so natural solutions, biopesticides and insecticides in order to fight against insects based on garlic. And to finish with this, ladies and gentlemen, it's always a pleasure for us to participate in this exchange platform. Thank you so much.
Votre travail inspirant et la protection, entre autres, des puits de carbone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ale, for your work, and especially for the protection of these carbon wells, which are so essential.
Berg Jensen, Minister of Social Affairs and Health of Islands in Finland. As you know, Ireland is leading by example. You won the European Sustainability Award in 2019 and produced yearly assessment of your 7 long-term goals. So please share with us, what are your recommendations out of the COVID-19 crisis to expand the sustainability work? The floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation to participate in this event. It has been very interesting to listen to all of today's speakers. Resilient and sustainable development has long been an essential part of the society of Åland Islands. We are an autonomy located in the center of the Baltic Sea in Northern Europe, between Sweden and Finland. Åland has a population of 30,000 people and consists of 6,000 small islands where 60 are inhabited. With an understanding that nature is the foundation for human existence, the Åland Parliament and the Åland government in 2014 decided to adopt a common goal of total sustainable development in Åland no later than 2051. This anonymous and long-term decision has proven to be a key to open for the integration of climate, biodiversity, and sustainable development agendas. The decision enabled the government of Åland to invite everyone who lives on Åland to participate and create a common vision of our society. A true inside-out, bottom-up process led us to a vision that can be summarized in one sentence. Everyone can flourish in a viable society on the islands of peace. The vision reflects the best version of the society that we can imagine and acts as a source of inspiration and driver of change. Nevertheless, there are limits to the vision. A vision should push the society towards a sustainable future. It has developed within the framework of scientific understanding of sustainability. Based on the vision, 7 strategic development goals has been defined, all of which are to be achieved by 2030. The 7 goals cover social sustainability, biodiversity, clean water, climate action, as well as sustainable consumption and production. Reaching these goals will make our society even more attractive than today. We have been implementing the vision and the strategic development goals for the past 5 years. Step by step, we are getting closer to reaching the goals. We have supportive structures in place for the implementation. a network of multi-sectoral collaboration and guidance fosters change. The network is not a government agency. Instead, it is freely formed collaboration between all its participants. Within the network, business leaders, politicians, civil servants, and civil society representatives can collaborate and join the conversation with one another. The COVID-19 epidemic has so far been well controlled on the Åland Island. So far, no one has died due to COVID-19. This success is largely due to immediate ban on visit to elderly homes, ambitious training for elderly home staff, a strong infection control team that has done rigorous contact investigation around each case, and extensive communication efforts to the public. However, the consequences of border closures, other measures to curb the epidemic has caused serious problems to our society. The Åland business community and our residents are both dependent on accustomed to open borders. This is not least important for our citizens' opportunity for cultural exchange and the opportunity to visit relatives and friends. At the outbreak of the COVID-19 epidemic, no one could tell the impact that it would have on society. End of March 2020, we realized that the pandemic would not end within weeks or months. We gathered for multiple tasks how to act in wise manner. The discussion ended in strategic decisions. Our long-term strategic development goals remain unchanged and should be used as a guiding tool during the out of the COVID-19 epidemic. We have learned that a well-established long-term agenda for the development of society builds resilience for times of crisis. However, COVID-19 crisis has made it crystal clear that our society dependent on other societies. Our society cannot become sustainable on its own. We and the rest of the world needs to transform together. To conclude, the Agenda 2030 and the 17 SDGs are all about generosity and empowerment. Life is local, and we believe it's time for citizens and local societies of the world to unite. We think maybe it's time for UN to become UW, the United World, by opening for some kind of membership for subnational and regional governments. Thank you, and greetings from the Åland Islands, and I hope that we can meet you all in Åland in the future.
Well, many, many thanks, and I hope that too. And a great message. It's full of passion, and a great idea also to have a UN UNW. Anyway, very, very good. I thank you very, very much for all that. I am now happy to introduce a longtime colleague and friend for Quebec, the Honorable Sergio Graf, Secretary for the Environment of Jalisco in Mexico. Sergio, the COVID-19 outbreak brought attention to the importance of a biodiverse ecosystem to avoid future diseases. What is Jalisco doing to fight against biodiversity loss? And can you also share with us, in your perspective, the role of the Edinburgh Declaration on the road to COP15? Dear Sergio, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, John.
Thank you so much, John. It's really a pleasure to greet you and to participate in this high-level forum, sharing experiences with regions that really are leaders at a global level. The present century has shown us that the environmental problems have to be faced in an urgent way. So the global warming with the natural processes and the number of extinction of species and several ecosystems are caused by the human activities, the pollution of the water, of the soil, of the air, they have increased in a meaningful way the vulnerability of our societies, making the problems of inequality even more acute in our nations. The presence of a pandemic of a zoonotic origin, unlike other epidemics in history, was brought about by an animal, and this is the proof that the interaction between human societies and nature is degenerating and is presenting many risks for the subsistence of our ways of life. These global challenges are demanding really actions from the governments, individuals, organizations, and firm actions. We need to make a very big effort for these trends of degradations of ecosystems, and really in front of these complex problems, solutions must be innovative and complex too, and they are built on the local, at the cooperative level between the society and the governments. And at the local level, we find the key elements to fulfill the commitments, the international commitments regarding biodiversity, fight against poverty, sustainability. So that's why the role of the governments, subnational governments, are really very important. And from Jalisco, we are the second economy of our country. We are the first producer of food in Mexico and an important center of technology in the whole country. But this economic development that has allowed us to evolve has also been a factor of degradation and loss of our ecosystem, and has really increased our vulnerability. And deforestation is one of the main factors of loss of biodiversity and of degradation of our ecosystem. Between 2009 and 2013, we lost more than 30,000 hectares, and we are thinking that we are going to lose 90,000 hectares in the next years. And this is really something very important, because this has been brought about by three commercial productivity. So the extensive livestock, avocado cultivation, and in order to solve this problem and to preserve the 4 million of hectares in our state and the big biological diversity they are representing, we have designed several policies that are part of the state integration initiative in the farming and livestock sector, in order to guarantee that these productive change are not subject to deforestation in the short run. For instance, for the chain tequila, together with the consortium tequila, which is the entity in charge of the conformity of this origin denomination of it and the tequila industry, we have made a protocol and a certification of zero deforestation, which is compulsory, including a map of chosen areas with a baseline 2016, what makes tequila the first distillated drink at an international level with a certificate of no deforestation. So regarding the production of meat, we developed a project with the Forest Task Force, with the funding of the initiative of international ways, such as Norway, Britain, civil societies, and coordinating with the associations of producers. And we are looking for the development of bovine livestock that is included and including the commercialization of the meat. And for the avocado, we want to reach this export of avocado just from crops that have got international certificate guaranteeing that there has not been deforestation for it. So the protected natural spaces are other of these important policies in order to solve the problems and deforestation, and this allows us to launch programs of rural programs coordinated with the local populations that live there, and to reduce the inequalities of the populations inhabiting these areas. So the size of the challenges we have got ahead is still huge, so we understand that in order to find solutions for this, we have to think in an innovative and different way. And in this sense, with the support of the program of United Nations BioMexico, we are developing BioFin Jalisco in order to give financial resources resources to the actions that we need to preserve the biodiversity in the state. Within this framework, we have designed an initiative for the speeding up of the economy of Jalisco with several financial tools with the different secretaries of the states, and also with the impulse of biotechnology and the transfers of the biotechnology for the de-acceleration of those companies that are affecting the preservation of biodiversity. That's why we are convinced that the reactivation due to COVID-19 needs also an environmental policy. That's something essential for a successful implementation that can lead us to a sustainability agenda. And as a government that has been signing the Edinburgh Statement, we think that there is a very big opportunity for the visibility of this in order to achieve our goals in the COP15, and then we are going to be firmly determined to achieve our goals and the Vision 2050, and we want to be part of the global decisions as a subnational government. Thank you so much.
Inspiring, Sergio, thank you very, very much. It's always great to see how Jalisco's action is really inspiring for all other governments. So thank you, and I hope we will be able to really meet in person soon. Thank you very much. Our last speaker for today is the Honorable Eduardo Trani, Sub-Secretary of the Environment of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Mr. Trani, Sao Paulo is also member of the Advisory Committee on Subnational Governance to the CBD. Please tell us more about the work for the recognition of subnational action for nature. Also, how has the work of the Environment Department contributed to the second voluntary subnational review that Sao Paulo is launching soon? Mr. Trani, the floor is yours.
Una salutación especial cordial a todos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much for the invitation of Regions 4. I'm here today in order to talk on behalf of Sao Paulo state in Brazil. As you know, this is a nation, this is a state. I want to say to my colleague of Finland, they are a very small island. We are one state with 45 million inhabitants, but we have the same problems and challenges in the management of sustainability. The state of Sao Paulo, I am talking on behalf of our governor, Eduardo, and the Secretary of Infrastructures, Mr. Marcos Pinedo. I am in charge of the work of the resources of environment in the state, and I wanted to say that the integration is really the big issue, the big topic, because we have a state with 645 municipalities that need a regional and local work, which is very important. The government in 2019 was in charge of the objectives of sustainable development of the agenda, and he thought it was an instrument of the pluriannual plan of our budget. The law of budget of the state, which is a very important one, is together with the agency of the sustainable objectives, and it generates a positive impact in the 5 P's of the sustainability. So persons, planet, prosperity, partnership, and past. This work involved, therefore, really generated another agenda, a second one that has been affected by the COVID. You know that there is a very big problem in the control of COVID, but in Sao Paulo state, due to the firm work of our government, we have really controlled the pandemics quite well, and we are starting a second work, which is the big post-recovery agenda of the economy. And in this agenda, the central topic is the integration of agendas of climate and diversity. And we have got in the government the integration of two extreme parts. And of course, many examples are going to be generated. We have 5 fundamental points. The first one is to work from now onwards in renewable energies and advanced fossil energy. Sao Paulo, as you know, is the biggest in Brazil and the world in ethanol from the sugarcane and natural gas to transform a fossil economy to a low carbon one. We are implementing examples of biofuel, biomethane, ethanol of second generation, and we are also working with hydrogen. All these things in order to say that the importance that Sao Paulo has got within the Brazil economy can be the example. The second big work is concentration on forest recovery, so the farming of low carbon in bioeconomy. And in this point there are many interesting works, such as the examples of the program of legal agriculture that we want to transfer to the COPE, with the challenges of restoring more than 800,000 of hectares in the whole state, and to be an example for the whole country. And the third point, the control of pollution, the quality of the air, sustainable transport as policies, and examples of programs that have yielded very interesting results. For instance, we have to remember this agreement of Sao Paulo state with companies and enterprises that have really adopted voluntary measures of reduction of gas. And fourth, the security of water and hydric resources with the environmental sanitizing. We are about to make a legal revolution in sanitizing and also in work for the security in the whole. And finally, another very important topic for the other municipalities and sustainable cities with programs. And we are going to do this with international bodies. And finally, I could give many more examples. I have got many publications. A lot of us are involved in the same point. And I have to say that we are very happy for the fact that the governor of the state, Mr. Ondoria, on July the 20th, is going to say a decree of adherence of the state to the campaigns of the government to fulfill the commitments of the climate agenda. And the state has been committed with an action plan for the climate for the year 2050. So the integration is made in the government with the participation of all of us. So this is the big challenge of Sao Paulo state. Thank you so much for Jean. I have taken 1 minute more. Thank you so much and have a good day and a good job.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Trani. And I cannot stress enough the crucial role that Sao Paulo can play in the ongoing negotiation with the CBD also. So thank you again for all your work, and continue to be with us and to be in action. Thank you again. Well, dear friends, we had the chance to share the vision and good practices of leaders who agreed to share with us not only their actions, but above all, their passion and their deep values for a more sustainable future in harmony with nature. I would like to sincerely thank all the panelists who instilled this contagious desire to take action. The climate and biodiversity crisis must be tackled jointly to achieve the sustainable development goals. Synergy is the key word to accelerate action. It is so important. It is our duty to write the next chapter of history. You are agents of change, and the entire world is counting on you. I invite you to subscribe to Regions 4 newsletter to learn more about the next 2 major events at COP15 and COP 26. It is very important. Please participate. A press release and the recording of the session will be available also at the Regions 4 website, www.regions4.org. And once again, thank you all, and I hope to have the privilege of seeing you very soon in real, under normal condition, where we can finally shake hands. So thank you again, and have a great day.